production.
Yes, Joe Biden did many terrible things to lead to an increase in prices. I agree, Margaret.
Case, it wasn't clear if he was radicalized when he got here or while he was living here.
I don't really care, Margaret. I don't want that person in my country, and I think most Americans agree with me. Let me ask this question, Margaret. Let's separate the immigration issue. If you had a violent murderer in a school, of course I want law enforcement to go and get that person out.
Of course.
So what's the point of the question?
Hi everyone, and welcome back to the channel. If you are meeting me for the first time, my name is Clevy and it is so nice to meet you. You guys, this video dropped a few hours ago, and this is an interview with our current VP, JD Vance, and a CBS reporter. It is almost 20 minutes long, and I was able to highlight 4 different topics, and I think it's a topic that all of us will be interested in. And honestly, it feels so good and so refreshing to have a VP, listen to me, to have a VP who is so eloquent, to have a VP who actually cares about the American public. And the contrast between JD and his predecessor is astounding. Let's dive right into the video.
You campaigned on lowering prices for consumers. We've seen all of these executive orders. Which one lowers prices?
We have done a lot, and there have been a number of executive orders that have caused already jobs to start coming back into our country, which is a core part of lowering prices. More capital investment, more job creation in our economy is one of the things that's going to drive down prices for all consumers, but also raise wages so that people can afford to buy the things that they need. If you look at our slate of executive orders, no, Margaret, prices are going to come down, but it's going to take a little bit of time, right? The president has been president for all of 5 days. I think that in those 5 days, he's accomplished more than Joe Biden did in 4 years. It's been an incredible breakneck pace of activity. We're going to work with Congress. We're, of course, going to have more executive orders, and we're going to try the way that you lower prices is that you encourage more capital investment into our country. And you ask specifically, what executive order is going to help lower prices? All of the stuff that we've done on energy, to explore more energy reserves, to develop more energy resources in the United States of America. One of the main drivers of increased prices under the Biden administration is that we had a massive increase in energy prices. Donald Trump has already taken multiple executive actions that are going to lower energy prices, and I do believe that means consumers are going to see lower prices at the pump and at the grocery store, but it's going to take a little bit of time. Rome wasn't built in a day, and while we've done a whole lot, we can't undo all of the damage of Joe Biden's presidency in 4 days.
Well, there are a lot of things that contributed to higher energy prices, and there was record oil and gas production.
Yes, Joe Biden did many terrible things to lead to an increase in prices. I agree, Margaret.
No, but all the things you experience at the grocery store are what people touch and feel. That's what you were talking about, bacon on the campaign trail.
Of course, of course.
Those things, when do consumers actually get to touch and feel a difference in their lives?
Well, Margaret, how does bacon get to the grocery store? It comes on trucks that are fueled by diesel fuel. If the diesel's way too expensive, the bacon's going to become more expensive. How do we grow the bacon? Our farmers need energy to produce it. So if we lower energy prices, we are going to see lower prices for consumers, and that is what we're trying to fight for.
Let me ask you about another area that you campaigned on quite a lot, and there was a flurry of activity on, and that has to do with immigration.
Sure.
The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops this week condemned some of the executive orders signed by President Trump, specifically those allowing immigration and customs enforcement to enter churches and to enter schools. Do you personally support the idea of conducting a raid or enforcement action in a church service, at a school?
Well, let me address this. Of course, if you have a person who is convicted of a violent crime, whether they're an illegal immigrant or a non-illegal immigrant, you have to go and get that person to protect the public safety. That's not unique to immigration. But let me just address this particular issue, Margaret, because as a practicing Catholic, I was actually heartbroken by that statement. And I think that the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops needs to actually look in the mirror a little bit and recognize that when they receive over $100 million to help resettle illegal immigrants, are they worried about humanitarian concerns, or are they actually worried about their bottom line? We are going to enforce immigration law. We're going to protect the American people.
Yeah.
Donald Trump promised to do that. And I believe the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, if they're worried about the humanitarian costs of immigration enforcement, let them talk about the children who have been sex trafficked because of the wide open border of Joe Biden.
You personally
let them talk
support
about
them going into
people like
schools
Laken
and
Riley
churches.
who were brutally murdered. I support us doing law enforcement against violent criminals, whether they're illegal immigrants or anybody else, in a way that keeps us safe. Let me ask this question,
But
Margaret. Let's separate the immigration issue. If you had a violent murderer in a school, of course I want law enforcement to go and get that person out.
Of course.
So what's the point of the question?
You changed the regulation this week. That's the point of the question.
Exactly.
Giving the authority
Yes.
to go into churches
Exactly.
and go into schools.
We empowered law enforcement to enforce
But
the
that
law
also
everywhere
has
to
a
protect
knock-on
Americans.
effect, a chilling effect, arguably, to people to not send their kids to school.
I desperately hope it has a chilling
In the
effect on
churches,
illegal
you think
immigrants
the
coming
U.S.
into our
Conference
country.
of Catholic Bishops are actively hiding criminals from
I think the U.S.
law enforcement?
Conference of Catholic Bishops has frankly not been a good partner in common sense immigration enforcement that the American people voted for. And I hope, again, as a devout Catholic, that they'll do better.
There are 5 legal challenges already to one of the other immigration actions, the order on birthright citizenship. A federal judge appointed by Ronald Reagan, I think you'd agree, has some conservative credentials,
Sure.
paused the order to end birthright citizenship, calling it blatantly unconstitutional. How do you reconcile this challenge to the 14th Amendment to the Constitution?
So I obviously disagree with that judge, and these things, some of them will be litigated. That's the nature of our constitutional system. But here's the basic idea of President Trump's view on this. If you are a lawful permanent resident or a legal immigrant who plans to stay, your children, of course, should become American citizens. But let's say you're the child of an ambassador. You don't become...
But that's not part of it.
Well, that
There's
is
already a carve-out
an
having to do
important
with kids of
principle.
diplomats.
But we're saying that carve-out should apply to anybody who doesn't plan to stay here. If you come here on vacation and you have a baby in an American hospital, that baby doesn't become an American citizen. If you're an illegal alien and you come here temporarily, hopefully, your child does not become an American citizen by virtue of just having been born on American soil. It's a very basic principle in American immigration law that if you want to become an American citizen and you've done it the right way, and the American people in their collective wisdom have welcomed you into our national community, then you become a citizen. But temporary residents, people who come in here, whether legally or illegally, and don't plan to stay, their children shouldn't become American citizens. I don't know any country that does that or why we would be different.
Well, this is a country founded by immigrants.
Well, this is a country
This is a
founded
unique
by...
country.
This is a very unique country, and it was founded by some immigrants and some settlers, but just because we were founded by immigrants doesn't mean that 240 years later that we have to have the dumbest immigration policy in the world. No country says that temporary visitors, their children, will be given complete access to the benefits and blessings of American citizenship. America should actually look out for the interests of our citizens first, and that means, again, if you're here permanently and lawfully, your kid becomes an American citizen. If you're not here permanently, if you're not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States and don't plan to be, why would we make those people's children American citizens permanently?
I want to ask you about refugee admissions, which were just suspended by the president. That has nothing to do with the U.S. border. Refugee screening takes 18 to 24 months to go through. They are heavily vetted. Left literally at the airport this week were thousands of Afghans, some of whom had worked with the United States government and were promised to come here. When you talked to us in August, you said, I don't think we should abandon anybody who's been properly vetted and helped us. Do you stand by that?
Well, Margaret, I don't agree that all these immigrants or all these refugees have been properly vetted. In fact, we know that there are cases of people who allegedly were properly vetted and then were literally planning terrorist attacks on our country. That happened during the campaign, if you may remember. So clearly not all of these foreign nationals
but there are
have been properly
30,000
vetted.
people in the pipeline, Afghan refugees.
But my primary
Do you stand by
concern
it?
as the vice president, Margaret, is to look after the American people. And now that
So
we
no.
know that we have vetting problems with a lot of these refugee programs, we absolutely cannot unleash thousands of unvetted people into our country.
These
It's
people are
not
vetted.
good.
These people are vetted.
Just like the guy who planned a terrorist attack in Oklahoma a few months ago, he was allegedly properly vetted, and many people in the media and the Democratic Party said that he was properly vetted. Clearly he wasn't. I don't want my children to share a neighborhood with people who are not properly vetted, and because I don't want it for my kids, I'm not going to force any other American citizens' kids to do that either.
No, and that was a very particular case. It wasn't clear if he was radicalized when he got here or while he was living here.
I don't really care, Margaret. I don't want that person in my country, and I think most Americans agree with me.
Boy, where do we even start from? Now, if we're taking our mind back to when the election started, right? Yes, and JD was being declared as, President Trump's running mate, the media brought out so many clips of where JD was talking here and there. And this is where mainstream really, really deceives people, right? They brought out different clips when he's answering questions from different contexts, putting it into one and making it seem like he's talking about one and the same thing. And I know that during that period, a lot of people were like, oh my God, why JD? Why JD? Why JD? And every single time he goes on an interview during the election period, I was always so proud of how he handled all of those interviews. It's already a fact, and it's already a thing that we all know that every time it's a Republican at the other end of the seat, the interviewer somehow automatically leaves their job as being a reporter and converts themselves into the Democratic Party spokesperson. We already know that, right? And so every single time I hear him speak, and I hear him tackle all of these questions, oh my God. I'm like, there was something Trump saw that we didn't see. Honestly. Honestly, like, and it made sense because even that night when they won the election, Trump says every single time we told JD, go into the enemy's camp, grant that interview, and he does it without even without even complaining. And we see all of this every time. At this point, if I were one, I wouldn't even want to go face to face with JD. Why? Because it doesn't allow them control the narrative. And so every single time you watch his interviews, you have nothing to pick out. You have nothing to pick out. You have nothing to use against him. Absolutely nothing. Because he murders every interview. Thank you so much for this. He touched on it. This video already answered it all. Last week on the channel, we did talk about, I think numerous times, about Pete and people's reaction to him being the Secretary of Defense. And shout out to Senator Mullin. You did your thing. You came up. He pointed out the hypocrisy to them. So we're not going to dive right into that. But all of the different topics that have been coming up for the past couple of days have actually been addressed in this interview. So what do you think about it? Do you go with what it's saying? Does it resonate with you? Do you feel like, oh yes, it is actually real and true? Or you disagree with some of the things he said? Let me know in the comment section and I'll see you right there. Do have an amazing day.